Nimsdai, the legend of summits. He now rests in peace, but he died doing what he loved the most, what he was most passionate about. And in that sense, his death it resembles a lot with one of the most famous or infamous deaths in the history of thought and philosophy, which is the death of Socrates. Although Socrates and Nimsdai they belong to two different worlds, one to the frozen heights of mountains and other to the intellectual heights of philosophy. Yet they both shared a profound philosophical truth, which is that a meaningful life it's not measured by how long it lasts, but rather by for what vision, for what purpose you are willing to risk it for. For Nimsdai mountains, they were never merely landscapes to conquer, but it was a place where he encountered himself. Every ascent, every summit, it was a face-to-face dialogue with fear, with mortality, with courage and with freedom. He didn't kind of ignore the risk or the danger, but he rather accepted it as a prize for pursuing what gave his life its deepest meaning. In the same way, Socrates, he accepted his death. He drank the poison hemlock not because he was a criminal, but because if he had escaped his death, it would have meant him abandoning his entire philosophy. So he killed himself so that his philosophical truths they become eternal. Socrates, he was accused of corrupting the youth and questioning the old traditional belief. So he was put on a trial, and he had two choices: either he stops teaching philosophy or he dies. Now, for Socrates, philosophy it was not an academic subject or an intellectual hobby, but it was rather the commitment to seek truth, justice, virtue, regardless of the consequences. So obviously he couldn't abandon philosophy, so he chose death. But in choosing death, he did something really profound. People often question that if the trial was unjust and if Socrates had an opportunity to escape, then why didn't he escape? And Socrates answers that he had lived 70 years in Athens under its law. He had owned property under the law, he had married under the law, he participated in its political life, and even though he was free to escape, but he chose to stay. So, in a way, he had entered into a social agreement with Athens and its law. Now, if he had escaped and abandoned the law, then it would have spread the message that the laws they are only to be followed when they are convenient. So, it would have collapsed the whole legal system. He disobeyed the command of the state to stop philosophizing, but he obeyed the legal punishment for disobeying. Between the authority of the state and the authority of the truth, he chose truth. He rejected injustice, but he didn't reject the existence of law itself. So in a way, his death, it was the earliest examples of civil disobedience, which is deliberately rejecting an unjust law while peacefully accepting the legal punishment. The stories of Nimsda and Socrates, they'll forever eliminate a profound philosophical distinction, which is the difference between merely surviving and truly living. So I ended by quoting one of the famous lines of Socrates, which is, "The unexamined life is not worth living." Or how Nimsda says,
Giving up is not in the blood, sir. It's not in the blood.